welcome to Money Monkey Africa, your go-to financial podcast. And today we are going to be talking about business strategy and business development with an excellent business strategist, Wilson Heri. Welcome to Money Monkey.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I think the bulk of what we need to understand today is it's a very good day. It's a bright day, and we want to understand how businesses can actually scale using strategy.
Yes.
So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Most welcome.
And definitely look forward to helping whoever is actually tuning in to help their businesses thrive. Yeah.
So I hope you stay tuned for how to get money from your business. So how did you get into this space?
So that's an interesting question. I actually have a background in finance. So I was actually a business consultant for a management consulting company for a year. And the bulk of what we do was just around different programs, helping SMEs to thrive and also helping businesses to scale. We used to train them and also give them strategy and execute it with them, because traditional consultants always come into businesses, come up with a very good strategy, put it on paper, and then you have to implement it on yourself. So we actually were living with the clients we were serving to make sure that we actually take them through the end-to-end process of strategy execution. And also training them to actually understand what is required in the internal business operations and environment, and also the external market. So that went actually well, and I felt a sense of purpose in doing that. So hence Pivot Hive, which is actually the business that I'm currently in, with some other consultants as well. So the bulk of what Pivot Hive does is we understand businesses need to scale in two areas, just strategy and also programs. So most people cannot afford consultants, and there's no problem with that. So Pivot Hive makes sure that we actually train people to understand all the processes in the internal business environment and external business environment to be able to run a lean business. And also for the strategy, we support SMEs in different sectors. We're very sector agnostic as possible. So anyone can actually come to the space and actually derive value, because businesses have the same backbone, and we all want to make profit. We all want to scale and grow. So that is what Pivot Hive is about. And for myself, it's just I mentioned this to you a bit back, that I'm also a fan of traveling. I really like coming up as this informal guy, just going outside there, sitting in the window seat, blending with the environment around me, just so that I can actually appreciate the beauty of the environment, because the world is changing, and we really need to be also. We need to congest ourselves outside the consulting space and just allow some energy from outside.
I love that. And you're talking about the backbone of a business. So tell us what's behind the skeleton of a business. What needs to be there for business to scale up?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So yes, businesses have one backbone. We all are in business for one thing, because if that one thing is not achieved, then we are not in business. So the core objective of a business is always to make profit. But people look at the profit so much and forget about the internal business operations. So you need to understand business needs to have structure. And structure is very important. So behind a successful business is one, structure. As you're working to get revenue or profit for the business, you need to make sure that you have structures in your business. If you have different departments, you need to make sure they understand what is expected of them and what they actually need to do, what platforms they need to use, what KPIs they have. That is the structure for the business. That is the structure for the departments. You also need to have a good team. So either you're working alone, trying to juggle between everything as an entrepreneur, but also you really need to understand that you need to have the right people in the team. So talent is expensive, but essentially you can actually be able to train people. So you can bring someone with semi-skill up, someone who's very semi-skilled, and actually upskill them as they grow so they can actually execute. But also behind a successful business is the right team.
Structure and team.
Team with the right mentality. You also need to make sure that you're giving them the vision of the business. You need to transfer that to the people you work with. If the vision of the business is only stays with the entrepreneur, the business owner, people will just come to the typical 9-to-5 day job and wait for the paycheck in the end of the month, because that's what it all means for them. But they need to understand that for us to get to point X, we have to make sure that these are the KPIs we need to move. to 10x our growth in terms of revenue, grow our client base, and make sure that our operations are a bit smoother.
Yeah. It's like, as you've said, if you have no transparency, it's if you're just running soldiers, like, this is a mission, we need to get here, instead of, visionaries, like, this is why we need to get here. So that's really good. And just in line with, working with a team, as a business strategist and even working with different projects, what secret is there in running a team? Because you might have the right team members in terms of their functions, but then it's just not working. So as a leader, what do you need to do to make the team be effective? And just,
That's a good question as well. But also, just to top up on what we've just been talking about, the aspect is, the first thing is always the same. They need to understand the vision whatsoever. And once they actually understand, how you can actually manage a team is, one, through training. Because now that they understand this is where we need to go, it's now constantly training them. You need to put a KPI in the business for actually training the team. Because I'll talk about something called a balance scorecard. It's a very, very important tool, and for business to translate to growth, it actually mentioned the growth of businesses in 4 areas. So the first area is revenue as usual, customer experience and the customer, the internal business and external processes, and the learning and development of the team. So how this ties to running a good team is actually through that. You now need to understand, you need to train your team, because if the team understand what they need to do and what is expected of them, they'll approach it with helping them to execute in the job. So above is the internal processes and external processes. So the business is going to be a bit streamlined. And then once the business is streamlined, the customer is always going to be happy, because you're doing it in the right quality, in the right time, compared to other people who are doing the thing. And then now they'll always come and spend money in the business. So the customer is happy because of the operations, and then now they pay you guys to actually be able to execute what they would want from you guys, and then the revenue actually keeps climbing up and up.
Okay,
so that is very important for you to consider. If you're running teams, they need to be trained, they need to understand the vision, and also maybe just as a tip is also to understand the weaknesses, because you need to identify where the constraints are in terms of how they execute, and then if you actually realize that this person is good at this, you'd want them to stick. If they can specialize in those areas, they can be very productive. But again, you constantly train them on these other areas, they can actually be able to pick up multi-talented skills to run the business.
Training. And I think it's so sad that when someone gets into a job, in 30 years, they still are at that job, and they've not really grown. They've just grown in that particular space, but not training in terms of different areas to grow them. And I like that there is change.
Definitely.
So in terms of customers, I'm a business, and I started well. I had good customers at the beginning. It's year one is done. We are at year 2. And then, economy happens, and we lose all customers during COVID. So how do I get back on track to find customers? And the market has changed. So how would you advise someone?
That's also a good question. And for those who've actually lost customers, it's one thing you need to understand is entrepreneurship challenges are always the same at some point. We all have different challenges, but if we tie them and look them from a very granular level, it's just the same challenges we're facing. So if you are in business, the pandemic happened, and also a lot of business lost traction in terms of their customers. Others even closed. Even after being in operations for over 30 years, one pandemic has, affected the business to actually close. So if you're trying to get back to business, it's understanding how you used to perform before. Because again, if you failed, or fail is not even a good word, if you actually dropped off and your customers looked for a different alternative because you were not there, it's understanding the position you were at before you actually backslid to get to from those customers. So once you understand that, it's actually looking at how you can be able to create awareness. So you'd want now to come big and stronger on the social media side. You need now to make sure that you're representing yourself in all the areas that you are not and all the areas that you are in, to tell people that you're actually back. And you can use your referrals, the ones that you've worked with. You can communicate with them. Use word of mouth as much as possible to let people know that you're actually back in business. And now, if maybe it was so bad in terms of PR that your business actually people knew that you closed, it's now looking at how you can get people trust to actually understand that you're back doing it better than you used to do. So it's how you constantly come up with a communication strategy to inform those people that actually were not part, or those who that showed off, that can actually come back to your business model.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's communicating. It's a very clear communication strategy to get to them, and also leveraging marketing, word of mouth referrals. Another tip maybe someone can use is set up events. If depending on the space you're in, this is a bit dynamic, but mostly putting something like in fashion there's something called high tea events.
Yes.
So if you can do that, for example, in a fashion brand, you can actually call all those exclusive clients you used to work with together for an event and tell them that you're back for business. So you can also try to set up something very minimalistic, depending on your financial capability, and then now they can spread the word outside, and social media and the marketing strategy and communication can actually make you scale or come back to where the business was.
I love that.
Yeah.
And honestly, events do work, because I've been to events and I see a company and I'm like, wow, I want to just see what they have to offer.
But also there's a downside to events. But the thing that people just need to understand about events is you need to, you're not just coming to speak to people, but you need to have a call to action after all of that. If you collect all the data of attendees and actually do something about it, it's what you do in the event that actually makes sense. Because if people actually come for fun and drinks, they need to understand that it's your company and they need to know the objective of the event. So, and then you make sure you stick to those as possible.
Okay, awesome. So in terms of, now we've gotten customers, and I have seen that you have worked with different, venture buildings. So how do we scale up and monetize the strategies we have?
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. And as I remember, I always like saying I don't like being prescriptive. So for different businesses, it's very different. Monetization of a business is different from the type of business itself. But again, if you do want to monetize and get money from your customer, if I had correct, that was the question.
Yes.
So you need to understand your business model. How are you making money? Are you in the tech space? Are you in fashion? Are you in FMCG? Are you in manufacturing? Are you in energy? Look at what makes sense for you before you actually put a monetization strategy, because it actually informs how you're going to make money. And as much as you can prioritize and say this is what you need, the first thing is actually planning. So look at your financial needs and say this is the product I'm running and this is what I'd want to achieve. So it's always important for you to plan. Ideally, I advise people to mostly plan in a business context quarterly. So if you can do quarterly, especially in the beginning of the year, or annually, it's actually good. So you can go backward and actually plan for the whole year, and then you break it down into quarters, or break that into semi-annual, two semi-annual breaks, so that you can actually understand where you need to go. And then now once you understand where you need to go, you've highlighted all the things you'd want to achieve. Now you ask yourself, how am I going to get these things done? So again, it calls for understanding how you can go to the market and say, I need to price my products in this amount, so that actually people can see, you can see, this is where I'd want to go. And then you can understand that if this is where I want to go, and these are the products that I have, are my product priced correctly? Are my customers complaining? What's the feedback I've been getting from my products? And then actually see how you can actually price them. And if you monetize it, it actually means you look at the environment around you. So you would want to test as much as possible, especially around pricing. There's this article I was reading. If you move your pricing up by 50%, you're going to lose 50% of your people. So if you used to sell something at 50 bob and you actually now sell it at 100, 50% of your clients are likely to churn. But again, the other 50, it depends on what that means for them. So even strategies in terms of coming up with the pricing needs to be communicated to the customer as well. They need to understand, as for those in Kenya, they understand that the economy is currently not doing well because of different factors. The change in government and it has been an election year. An election year is always a slow year for different businesses, but again, it's also a year that businesses mostly are flatlined. So they need to plan for any event or change in the external environment, and then see how much they can actually monetize their business, but also look at the performance of the economy, because to them it's meeting their overheads. You need to make sure you pay your people on time. You need to make sure you're paying your overheads, like in terms of the bills and whatnot. And then you also need to make sure that you're paying yourself as an entrepreneur. So before putting a monetization strategy, there's so much you need to look at so that you can actually make the right monetization strategy. If it's for apps, which is something I really like, depending on what you want to do, you can use the freemium model. The freemium model is codependent on what the app does. So for those running software as a service, you need to start looking at the pricing against all the competitors doing the same thing. And for those who actually want to go with something called, it's a business model that is very, very multi-sided. So people think they're not paying, but they are actually the products, like the Facebook, the YouTube, the Twitters, because once they actually have that data, that your data in the platform, it actually means that you're the product. So they can link up with all advertisers, and you're actually able to see all the adverts that needs to be seen. So how it works is actually interesting. They actually use so much analytics of our user behavior in the platform, where we're spending so much time, and then whenever advertisers come in, they actually tell them, we are very, very sure that for this particular month, in this particular place you'd want your ad to be seen, it's 500 people using that space every month guaranteed, because they're monitoring all the changes over time. So for those in technology, they can select the perfect platform for them, but based on what they'd want to do. If it's a paid one, they need to look at the available. If it's something that is multi-sided, they see now having all this data, what does that mean for them in the long run? Because people have different market entry strategies, and you need to actually understand that.
So I think people who are in the tech space have gotten great advice.
Definitely.
And as we finish off, what advice do you have for people in terms of business strategy? And honestly, I think the trainings, everyone needs to sign up for Pivot Hive trainings just actually learn more. So what advice would you have?
Maybe I'd start by saying you need to actually be careful when you're looking at approaching consultants, because it might not be a need for you to go to consultants. They can be expensive, they can be cheap, but try to understand your problem before you get someone to fix it. So, and then it's also being resilient and understand that failing is also part of the problem. If you failed in this business, chances are whatever made you fail here can actually be lessons to the other business. So you should not be afraid of failure, and you need to find a community of people who actually are in the same space as you to get as much mentoring as you can and as much learning as you can in terms of events and in terms of just people picking up people who are very senior to actually learn from, because the people running businesses need to understand you need to navigate the business world with the wings of proper businessmen, and people who have been in the industry for a while can actually tell you how that one can go. So the word of advice there is just making sure you actually understand your problem before going to the consultant, and you also have to understand the problem that you're trying to solve. If you want to build a business model that is going to be here for forever, it's understanding a problem that never changes over time. Safaricom told us the same story, and they're still telling us the same story. So they're structured under the same problem. It keeps changing. The solution keeps changing over time, but the problem is essentially the same. Equity Bank is another brand that does the same. So it's understanding how you can actually stick to a problem for perpetuity, because it's a utility. It's a continuous utility position for you to understand that you can look at it and continue making money out of it and continue getting value from the business. So it's actually looking at that before you actually jump the gun to say this is what you need, and it might not be what you need. But again, failing is part of the process.
Failing is part of the process.
But you can lower your chances by Pivot Hive. We do those trainings we have a Pivot to Thrive cohort that is going on. So whoever would want to register for that is just taking you through an understanding of what you can do to build lean products and services that people and customers might like. So it's understanding that. So whoever is actually interested can sign up to that and get more extensive knowledge, because it's looking at what you can get before you actually jump and look for a consultant. You might understand yourself in the process of that program, and you might actually realize you actually did not need any consultant. Yeah.
And how much is it?
So we're doing it at 15K. 15K, and it's 4 to 8 weeks program. Wow. So for those who would have maybe a month to spare, we can blend it all together to give it to them for 4 weeks. But essentially, we do it for 8 weeks because you'd want it to be a bit lean and give you people a chance to actually understand and participate on that. And also, here's a tip that people also who need to understand. We do personality test before they actually begin. We begin training to understand what your personality is like and how that can actually help us in creating content structured to your personality and the problems of your business. And then once we understand that, we structure that and tailor that to make your business to grow.
Okay, amazing. I would really love to, just take the course, hopefully next year for me.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'll definitely... Guys who want to learn more about their business and everything, I'll link them up. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I've learned so much, and I've learned understand your business, understand the problem. The problem never changes. The solution will in time. But like food, everyone wants to eat, so you'll always want people to eat anyway. So that's it, guys, for this podcast. Thank you, Wilson, and feel free to join the training for Pivot. What's it called?
Pivot Hive. It's Pivot to Thrive. The training is actually Pivot to Thrive, and the company is Pivot Hive.
Yeah.
So you can also check us out on LinkedIn. We are very big in LinkedIn, so look at LinkedIn and Facebook to get an understanding of who we are. Thank you so much.
Pivot to Thrive. I really love it. So go ahead and pivot to thrive. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye-bye.